You seem to almost suggest that they come to your countries with a lesser breed of values.
No, I don't think I said that at any point, and that's another time you've tried to put something in my mouth.
So when you talk about the difference in value...
We agree that, for instance, where there are people who pretend that everyone who arrives is a terrorist is barking mad, okay? We can agree with that, but don't laugh at people with serious concerns about serious security concerns either.
Douglas Murray is back at it, once again delving into contentious issues, this time engaging with a group of Muslim activists to discuss immigration and the compatibility of Islam with Western culture. With his trademark candor, brace yourself for Murray's unabashed views.
I'm Hamad Abahawash. I'm a senior at Georgetown University. And my question is to Mr. Douglas Murray. And before I ask my question, I just want to say, you said no sound bites, but then you said the developing world cannot move to the developed world. I don't know what that's about.
I said it before.
My question is, since you brought up migration from the developing world, I'd like to ask you this. Every year, the developed world sends about $300 billion of aid to the developing world, but the developing world sends back trillions in debt repayments to the developed world. Now, don't you think that this is the main reason why migrants are moving to Europe? Because money is moving out of the developing world. Wealth is leaving the developing world and moving to the developed world, to build on what Lamont Hill said. Don't you think this is why people are moving to the Western world, to the developed world?
Well, no, I don't. Again, I repeat the fact there are no simple answers. And if it was simply the fact that you could, I don't know, do a debt default or something and solve the whole migration issue, then that would be great. But it just isn't the case. You think that if for instance, all African countries were allowed to default on debt, that they'd become burgeoning, flourishing societies? You think that the problem across, for instance, sub-Saharan Africa isn't just unbelievable greed and theft by politician after politician? You think that if you just wrote off the debt, that would stop being an issue and everyone would become transparent and clean in their dealings with money? I mean, the problems are much deeper than this. They're much deeper than just a simple solution like that. As, if I may just add quickly to the previous two comments, the late, very distinguished American diplomat Daniel Patrick Moynihan had a wonderful rule he came up with, known as Moynihan's Law, where he said that human rights, claims of human rights violations often happen in exactly inverse proportion to human rights violations. That is, you hear about them in the countries that are most free. And before long, you can end up with the presumption that the most free countries are the ones who are most abusive of human rights. And this happens with the case when we talk about our leaders and the ones... It's all very well. We can talk about the Trump administration. We can talk about the democracies and so on for all we like. We can all make criticisms, and we all should. But, okay, briefly, Mr. Putin, what are you going to do about him? What are you going to do about the mullahs in Iran? What are you going to do about the House of Saud in Saudi Arabia? You see, what we end up with is this situation. We go, oh, Mr. Trump, Mr. Trump. We can all do that. Believe me, I can riff on Trump all day.
But again, you're being quite selective, aren't you?
What are you going to do about the people you can't do anything about? Are you going to ignore them? Are you going to give them a pass?
Please.
So I'm going to talk briefly about, my mother's experience as an immigrant, and I want to touch on something that Mark Lamont Hill said, this power of education and telling people how refugees fit into the wider context of economic development. Here's why I'm very skeptical about that. Because when my mother arrived in the UK and her parents arrived in the UK, people still called them dirty packies. When she had graduated from Oxford University, she was still a brown person who was not seen as a citizen, right? So to what extent can we really sell this idea that being educated or fitting X, Y, and Z criteria is what you need to do as a refugee for people to humanize you. The inherent problem with these people is that they don't humanize you. You can't fulfill your oppressor's criteria so that they see you as human. So how do you humanize people?
Dehumanizing refugees, thank you very much. And with this, let me go to you, Douglas Murray. Because much of your argument, Douglas, seems to be about the us versus them, the fact that, we have our own values, our own Britishness, our own virtues, and they will come to our shores with their values, their traditions. You seem to almost suggest that they come to your countries with a lesser breed of values.
No, I don't think I said that at any point, and that's another time you've tried to put something in my mouth.
So when you talk about the difference in values, what do you suggest?
Look, first of all, I didn't say that. I said that there are challenges because we do know that there are challenges, and let's just be frank about this. I mean, for instance, I've been in the Gulf for the last week or so. I see more burqas in my home city of London than I have seen in the Gulf in recent days, certainly here in Doha. Now, I can't say I'm delighted by the sight of more and more burqas in London. Do I feel any hatred of the people who wear them? Of course not. Of course not. But I can't say I'm elated by it. And definitely there are times I think, you know, what percentage of burqas in this area becomes like not that pleasant for everyone else?
But again, is it all down to burqas? Because again, you're not asking people with other traditions whether they care about the sight of people drinking alcohol or showing up in bikinis. Again, it's a very
we could in Britain
Western-centric viewpoint.
I'm not. I have to say, you're going to bark up the wrong tree if you think you're going to persuade a Brit that we should stop drinking alcohol because of people arriving in our country. I mean, that's not going to happen. These things are all a bit of give and take.
That you bring your own traditions that don't quite fit with theirs.
Well,
they don't.
Yeah, there are, as I said, and before we got all confrontational, which you did from the get-go, I said what the problem is here is that these things are all rubbing against each other. And in that situation, you have to work out what things you're willing to give up, which things you're willing to compromise on, and which ones you're not. You're not going to persuade the Brits to massively change their culture, but let me just make the point. Every single society has certain aspects of it it doesn't want to give up. This one will. In Qatar, this one will. Everyone does. So please don't try to make this a kind of bigoted European thing. That would be a very dishonest way to. That would be a very dishonest way to represent
Just answer this question
debate.
directly if you can. Which of your values are you most afraid to lose? Which ones are most threatened by
freedom
the
of
arrival
speech.
of refugees?
Freedom of speech. It's the first one. Oh, you think that's not a problem?
I mean,
you think that's not a problem?
But
you think? Sorry, no. Let me pick up on that. Let me pick up on that. It's
what about
very
the values of
easy to
tolerance?
snigger. It's very easy to snigger about this until you've had friends shot in a newspaper office. It's very easy to laugh about that until it's happened to people you...
Over-exaggeration, Douglas, do you think in the West, this fear of Islam or anything that looks so different to us?
No, I mean, the society I'm from is one of the most pluralistic and diverse societies on earth. You couldn't get a larger range of people of different backgrounds and ethnicities and languages than you have in Britain.
And
which is why, once again, if I may push back against this thing you are pushing, which is that these are sort of uniquely bigoted, unwelcoming societies.
Not at all.
The evidence on this part of the stage would suggest that Britain is not,
If anything, I'm giving you the chance to tell us, from your perspective, what you find threatening or not about refugees coming to England.
Let me answer that by broadening, if I may. My suggestion would be, if we're to arrive at any kind of common understanding on this, is that we agree that, for instance, where there are people who pretend that everyone who arrives is a terrorist is barking mad. Okay? We can agree with that, but don't laugh at people with serious concerns about serious security concerns either. Because,
like what?
Well, because, you know, we had this in 2015 when certain officials in Europe said the likelihood that anyone coming on the boats among the 1.5 million people who arrived in Germany are going to be violent in any way is total, you know, xenophobic fantasy. And everyone laughed until people started letting off bombs, until, like in Ansbach in Germany, they just had a suicide bombing outside a wine bar. And it just stopped being quite so funny. So all I'm saying to you is, you can agree with me that people who say that most people arriving are going to be violent are ridiculous. Yes, but also don't claim it's ridiculous for people to have serious and sincere concerns about what is happening. Because if you do, there's no way anyone's going to arrive.
And that is the reality. Absolutely, Mark. How do you deal with this? It is a reality.
I do have to address that. Every society on earth has difficulty integrating people, okay, from a very different background. Yes. It's always difficult. Again, I don't think we should fall into this idea that Europeans are uniquely bad at it. We've had to do a lot of absorbing very fast, and we've done most of it very damn well. And bits of it haven't gone well, and we've got to address that. But again, we can agree that there is gun violence in America from crazy people who think they need to be armed to walk to the supermarket. And that doesn't mean, well, okay, but that doesn't mean that people in France don't have their own specific security concerns as well. And what I'm urging you to do is, let's not look at this just from an American point of view. In Europe, it is a serious security concern we have now, and we are trying to deal with it, and that shouldn't be laughed at.
Eva, question, please, from the audience again.
Good evening. My name is Asma, and I'm from Kenya. And my question is to you, Douglas. So you talked about people us serving justice, and do you think it's judicious for these people in Britain, for example, you talked about how Britain is giving aid to these countries in Africa. It's judicious for them to give this much money to these countries, but without even listening to their needs. So this only contributes to the white savior complex that is currently a big issue in
This
Africa.
whole notion of charity as opposed to policy.
Well, there is a saying we have, damned if you do and damned if you don't. If it's the case that if we don't give aid, we'd be accused of not giving aid, and if we do give aid, it's a white savior complex. I mean, we can all give aid better, for sure, and I just gave, in my opening remarks, what I think was a serious suggestion for one very good use of aid, which is to prioritize it in the region and in the neighboring countries of places people are fleeing from. But, I mean, as I say, I would refuse as well to see the multifarious problems that exist in your own home country and sadly across the continent of Africa. I refuse to say that that's, because of foreign aid only. It's so many things have gone wrong there, and you know that better than I do.
Subscribe for more.